Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. This week, Bayview, Port Huron, the Mackinac race. We get a chance to talk to three of the winners. We also get a chance to spend some time with, I'll just say, a traveling wanderer. We'll get into that story in just a couple of seconds. We start off the show by talking to the first guy who came across the line up at Mackinac Island on the shore course, and that was Paul Halsey on Hoodlum. They had a great race. There was a little more air towards the shore. This was a very slow race, probably the slowest since 2018. And we'll talk to Paul about their race and the enjoyment that he had on his Melgus 32. We also get to check in with a couple of the big Cove Island finishers, Dr. Phillip O'Neal on Natalie J. And we talked about Hughes on Heartbreaker, who were both, we talked to them a couple of weeks ago about the great race at the Queen's Cup. It's now 2 wins for Dr. O'Neal. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week with the Chicago Yacht Club's race up to Mackinac from Chicago. With a little bit of a preview on that. Then we had a chance to talk to a friend of mine who was actually taking the Great Loop on a power boat, despite the fact he was a lifelong sailor. Nagiman is going to talk to us about his trip, and we're going to kind of chronicle his visit to East Tawas and talk a little bit about his goals and a solo trip that's going to last the better part of the year. And then we're going to keep that as a regular feature of the show. And I think it'll be something that will be fun to watch. And he's a very engaging guy. And we'll get to that and all the other stuff in a couple of seconds. And up next is Paul. So we'll be back in a second. We're talking with Paul Halsey. And Paul, first of all, congratulations on being the first guy across the line on the short course in the annual Bayview 2022 Port Huron to Mac race. You had the short course, you had a Melgus 32, and how does it feel to be the first guy across? That's got to be pretty cool, regardless of which race you're in.
Kind of surreal. This is my 38th Mackinac, I believe. And I've done sailing on every size boat you can imagine. And I've been on the 52s, the 70s, and even then you're never quite the first boat. You always have a try that beats you. But rolling in a 32-foot boat and that harbor was completely empty. It was just an odd feeling, but very good. It was cool.
What time did you guys pull in, roughly, time-wise?
Roughly, I think we're sometime around 8 o'clock on Sunday evening. Okay. We had a heck of a battle. It wasn't like we were by ourselves. There was 5 boats punched out up front, and it came down to the last couple miles. So it was a pretty hard-fought battle.
Scott Sellers and his daughter were led most of the short course for a good while, and then you caught them. Just talk briefly about the winds on the shore, because we've talked to several people for the show on what it was like to be out in the middle of the lake, but it was as dicey on shore, I think, as it was out in the lake.
I think we experienced a ton of difference in pressure. I think it was angle. So as we started, we were in a starboard tack fetch, and the long course guys followed us quite a bit. You could see they started, as it freed up, they started angling out into the lake, where we were able to get some code zeros up and, really pump a lot of more stuff with that angle. They're, big, high pressure sitting in that middle of that lake on the second day, they got up there and parked, where we were able to just keep going. And we were hitting 10, 13 knots from Presqu'île in, and those guys were out there doing, 3 to 6 knots. And that was looking at like Natalie J and Heartbreaker. So when those guys are going 6 knots, it's light winds out there.
Well, Doc O'Neal even said that he looked at when they were tracking you guys, they saw that that's why one of the reasons after they came around the Cove Island, they headed south a little ways And he says that's the reason they won, because he realized you guys had breeze. What was amazing, again, watching the tractor and watching Yellow Brick, 12, 15, 18 miles apart, you'd see somebody doing 7, 8, 9, and downwind 10, 12 miles, you see them doing 3. So it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, we came around that corner, looked out on the lake, looked at shore, and you could see those little clouds forming over the shore. So we knew it was going to be a bit of a thermal day. So if you look at our track, we never got far away from that shore, and it paid off for us big time.
One of the, I think, advantages of being the first guy across the line is you got to pick a slips up there at the marina, up the harbor, up at Mackinac. You come in, it's just got to be a cool feeling, right?
Yeah, it's great. I can tell you though that now that we're able to use that harbor again, which we haven't in the past few years, and not just using it for wells, but we're able to stack boats up outside the wells. It's great having a well when you get there, but trying to get out is. I just talked to my partner Spencer Colpart. We both own the boat together, and he's still sitting up there trying to get the boat out.
Oh my gosh! Briefly tell us who was on your crew.
So there's 7 of us. We have myself and Spencer Colpart are the owners. By the way, all 7 of us have sailed together for the last 20 years. Adam Hollerbach was my navigator. We had Ian Hollerbach, his brother. Sorry, I had a phone call coming in from the Commodore Bayview. I also had Tanner Bryant, and we had trying to remember who I had now. We had Blaze Shaner, who lives up in the Harbor Springs area, and then we flew one guy in. His name is Alec. He's from Wisconsin. He sails a lot of the CNC 30 circuit they've got going up in Wisconsin now. So that was our crew. We've all been together forever. It was back in the 24s or whatever we sail now. We kind of sail as a group.
And I wore this shirt specifically. You fall in love with the boys in Wisconsin. Melgus builds a heck of a boat. And the 32 is a fast boat.
Yeah. So I owned 4 Melgus 24s and raced all over the country for almost 20 years. I think if you ask me personally, it was the best boat ever built, way ahead of its time. And I still believe that. I would trade this 32 for a 24 in a heartbeat. Problem I have is I just don't have the ability to travel anymore on weekends. So the 32 was the one I own is an old DeVos boat. And it's been wonderful. I mean, I even though I don't have the time to travel and do some of those bigger events, I still get to go fast, and it's pretty competitive, especially in the Detroit area where we experience some lighter winds. The boat's really competitive.
Nobody's asked this question. I want to ask it. This is not necessarily about the racing part of it. Not everybody can be in a Melgus 32 or sort of a sled. There's a variety of cruising boats that race as well. But talk to the value of the shore course. If you're not the greatest racer in the world, it's a very safe race, and it's one you can participate in. And I think the shore course, having come back, having not had it in 20, talk about the fun of the shore course. And if somebody was interested in racing, it'd be the perfect place to start.
I'm glad you asked the question, because what we're trying to do on the shore course is create another division, if you will, of sport boats. We're trying to build the number of entries into sailing. And I think that one of the big pieces that we're missing are boats like mine. They're wonderful day boats. They're not really set up for doing long distance. I actually started off sailing long course in my boat. It was an interesting experience. We ended up being out there until Wednesday. And so we ran out of water, ran out of food, all that. And that's not the big deal. But what I noticed is that when you go into that right corner of the lake, there are a few options for safety or for safe harbor if you run into trouble. For example, the Melgus 32, the mast lives on a ram, and it really wasn't designed to put plates underneath. If that ram blows, you stand a good chance of losing the rig. So once I sailed that long course, I started really not pushing, but suggesting to the Mackinac Race Authority, we need to create a cool class on the shore, because no matter what happens on the shore, you're never more than, say, 10 miles from a safe harbor.
Right.
We started this 4 years ago, and it was picking up pace. We had 7 boats the first year, but then COVID hit, and you saw the numbers dwindle. The boys from Chicago were interested, but couldn't get their boats out of the facilities they stored them in the wintertime. It's just, you've seen a downward tick. And I really want to say that I appreciate the Mackinac Race Authority, especially Chris Clark, who ran the Mackinac this year, for their patience with us. The goal isn't to go sail against a lot of the, say, what I call the older IOR boats or the cruising boats. The goal is to sail against like boats. And the fact that they were gracious enough to keep us on that course, I can't thank them enough. I'm going to go hard to work in the next few months trying to rally some of the Melgus 32s that are around the Great Lakes and some other boats I think might fit into that formula, and see if we can build another division without pirating from others.
I think looking at, you were first in the R division, if I'm not mistaken.
So we were in the shore course, our class, and there were only 3 boats
Right.
in the class. So we weren't racing, we were racing each other, but we were kind of there for the overall.
I guess my point was going to be is that if a year from now you're displaying a flag on your boat and you won something between A and Z, nobody's going to really care. It's a flag, and it shows that it was. And there's a variety of. I think people think that the race is more difficult than it is. It's a difficult race. I don't mean to diminish it. There's all kind of boats that can race. I think sometimes that gets lost. I think there should be. They had 175 or so entrants this year, which typically they're around 240. Yeah. And boats are down, so we got to figure out a way to get more boats on the course. And
I think we've got a fair measurement system now with ORC, and that's why we have a measurement system. It shouldn't matter where we race, as long as it's a fair system. And this is no more of the political games that I think were part of the game, part of the rating system in the past. This is straight up, So, get your boat measured and come sail. I don't care what kind of boat you own. It's just a great time, and I love the shore course. It's fantastic.
One interesting question. This will finish it. You and your partner own the 32. When you're first across the line, what does it cost you in cash at the bar? Because it's got to cost a little more than if you finish later in the group, right?
I wasn't keeping track, and I know I'm going to get those credit card bills here in about a month. But I opened up the tabs. Let's just. Yeah.
The reason I'm asking, you think of all the people that race and all the old goats and all the Grand Rams. There's only a few people that can actually say they came across that line first in 98 years. That's got to be a pretty cool feeling for you.
It's pretty special. I've been talking with Adam. Adam Hallerbach had to leave right after we hit the shore, and he sent out a couple really interesting texts. But it was to our group, and he's like, this is my 30th Mackinac, and I've never had a finish or experience like that at a finish. It may never come again. And right. I kept telling there's mostly younger guys in my crew, and I'm like, hey, I'm 51. I've never seen it, and I probably will never see it again. Enjoy it.
Appreciate your time. Congratulations, and have a great rest of the summer. Hopefully, you're going to be at Uganda, right? You be up there?
We'll see. The boat is heading back. We may bring it back up. We're talking about it. I love that regatta, and whenever I can make it, I'll be there. And if not, hopefully I'll see you on the hill skiing.
Cool. Paul, thank you very much.
See you, Greg. Take care.
See you soon. Bye-bye. We're talking with Dr. Phillip O'Neal, who is the skipper of Natalie J, who just came across the line first in the 2002 Bayview Port Huron to Mackinac race. So first, let's start with the congratulations, Doc. That's a pretty good win for you. Is that your first?
It is our first. Been first overall a few times, but never been actually the first boat to finish. So yeah, that's quite an accomplishment. Feel pretty proud of that.
We've had a couple of chances already to talk to some finishers and just talk briefly about the weather, which is the most unusual setup since maybe 2018. The weather was crazy.
Yes, it was. This is my 45th one, and I don't remember ever being parked for so long during the race. We've had slower races before, but never just being 000. And usually, if you hit 000s, you're not going to win a thing. But this one was so widespread that everybody was affected by it.
We made mention of a couple of situations where you'd look at the fleet, and there'd be guys at the top of the fleet, at 6'3", and at the bottom of the fleet, 12, 15 miles away at 1.2. It was crazy.
Yes. And that was sort of a motivating factor for us a lot. I don't think we ever turned off our satellite data. And we were constantly checking that, and when's the next sked? Okay, well, they're going 0.5 faster or 0.1, and then you go, okay, we don't want to be there because they're parked, and then all of a sudden you're the one parked. Yeah, I know. In fact, I saw Bob, and he says, "Thank God they fell into that hole finally," and we're catching up. So. And that's the way the whole race was. Actually, up until Cove Island, it was a fairly straightforward race, but it was all after Cove that all the weird weather happened.
Now, after you came around the mark, you decided to go south when nobody else did, and that obviously takes some conviction. So when you go south, you separate yourself from the crowd and eventually win by 3 miles over 46 hours and change. What was the decision to make to go south there instead of staying on the rum line?
Well, I think that, we had a pretty eclectic class. You had two modern thoroughbreds with Natalie J and Heartbreaker, and then you had all the gray ladies, the Santa Cruz 70s, and that whole, and then some, one-off boats that just love that dead upwind light air stuff, and for us, all we can do is sail our own boat, and we've had enough experience that you looked at the weather, and the rum line always had this bubble right in the middle of no air. So to me, it made no sense to go straight down the rum line. Our son Phillip is our navigator, and obviously everything gets bounced off of Bora and collective decision onto what route we're going to take. And almost from the get-go, our decision was going to be not to go to the Ducks, but go south. And yes, we actually tried to get south relatively early on, and we just didn't have the right angle. And finally, we just said, well, if we don't go now, we're going to be stuck, and we're going to be stuck in the middle, and we don't want to be here. So we actually made the decision to jibe and head south.
When you're making a decision, the shore course fleet had pretty good wind most of the race along the shore. So is that something you look at, or was that not part of the decision?
No, it's that all plays into it. But again, their sailing characteristics are so different than ours. It doesn't play a lot other than to know that they're not getting parked up, and it's good to know where the breeze is. Of course, that eventually didn't. Well, it almost didn't pay out on Monday night or Sunday night when we were within, I think, 5 miles of the shore. We were actually never stopped prior to that. We had slowed down considerably a few times, but we were always able to keep plus knots going. And then when we get off Rogers City nighttime, you'd be going 6 knots, and then literally 5 minutes later, 0. The wind would just stop. So we kept bumping into the weather and to all of those 0 wind areas, and it was incredibly difficult to escape that. And if you tried to go offshore to get back in some breeze, it looked like it was there, and you would go for 5 minutes and then it would shut off there. So that was a very worrisome period.
Fair to say that too much wind is better than no wind?
I've had too much wind, and it's way more uncomfortable. But yes, at least you know what you're doing, and you can deal with that. Yeah, and when it stopped, you just have no idea when it's going to start again. So that's the frustrating part. Although, it's totally different than when we started racing. Now you have 5 different projections, the NAM, the European, the HRR. I mean, you go on and you pick your poison. But it's so you get guidance from that, and then experience going, well, that almost never happens in this part. So
you obviously finished first overall in coming across the line, and then you look the next day at the handicap and you finished third. Heartbreaker comes across the line second, and they finished 10th. Do you pay much attention to that, or is that more just a 52 fleet thing, and you stay within the numbers that matters?
Actually, we want to win. So yes, we pay attention to the handicaps. We know how much we owe these people, but we also understand the characteristics of these boats. As I said, the old gray ladies, the Santa Cruz 70s, they love head sail reaching, and they have gigantic jibs and tons of water line. And frankly, I thought we did awfully good on Saturday night, and only to find in the morning that all the 70s had caught up. And while we were first in our class to go around, second boat in the fleet to go around the mark, they were all right there. I mean, it was a restart. And when particularly on the handicap spread in there, anytime you have restarts, it hurts the highest rated boats. And if you looked at the overall results, it was a small boat race. All of the bigger, faster boats were all at the bottom in the overall standings. So, but as I said, all we can do is sail our own boat and make decisions based on what our boat does best, and cover the people that are close to us.
One of the questions I got to ask a couple other competitors: there's the proliferation of pros on these boats. The pro guys are, everybody's got them at the highest level, certainly. Would you be as good as you are? And that's not to take away your sailing, but you're not, when you have Bora Golare, an Olympic guy, and you have George Pete, and you have pros on them, how much do they mean to the actual race? And would it be pretty much the same without those guys?
It's hard to say, but it's interesting. I've won our class in 3 different boats under 3 different rules with all amateur guys. Bora, while he's a pro now, as I say, he started sailing with us when he was 17 or so, and trust me, he was no pro then, but he's just always been part of our program. And now my son-in-law, so it's just he's just part of the family on that. Having people like George Pete, he's been a longtime friend for ages, but yes, he has massive amount of knowledge, and particularly offshore knowledge, and he can jump in when there's some issue and help straighten it out, or okay, George, what do you think about this situation? And he goes, well, and he offers his 2 bits, and it all gets into the mix. So yes, I think that they're can be quite valuable, but you're right. I think everybody in our class has their share of pros, some way more than others.
There's, in looking down some of the crew rosters, there's Australians and it's an international race. I don't ask the question because I'm diminishing the quality of the guys that are amateurs. I say it because I think sometimes we forget here how good we are in terms of guys like you and Bob that are, I say you're amateur racers. You're not really an amateur racer with the kind of money that's been spent on the kind of campaigns, but there's an unbelievable amount of talent. I think sometimes this gets lost at just how good you guys are, but that little extra help sometimes I think is a booster.
Yeah, but I think though that a lot of people don't understand how good our local talent is here.
Right.
You know, when you sail long enough, in fact, it was quite remarkable. We're coming into the finish line, and there's obviously several shore guys, and we're going, okay, what about that guy down there? Why is he going so far inshore? And I go, oh, that's John Walton. Well, guess what? He's a Crescent guy. I've sailed a bunch with him. He is damn good. So when you see him pick a lane, you go, okay, we have to consider that, you know. And then you run into the top end of the CNC 35 guys. They have some terrific sailors in there, and have been, just because they choose not to buy a different boat and go somewhere. Trust me, they know how to sail, and they know how to sail the Mackinac race.
Absolutely.
And we had one relative new guy. He'd never been sailing on the lakes before, and that was a real eye opener for him, you know. And he keeps going, ducks. What are you talking about, ducks? I don't see any ducks. And I said, yeah, just know you don't want to go there. And you know, and we, you know, talk about this bay or that bay, and he had no idea what we're talking about. And I think that's what the local guys know. You know, it's like when you go out of town, you know, to do your first Block Island race, you know, geez, I didn't know anything about the different local areas out there, but you know, it just takes practice and experience.
Yeah. Last question. You head to Chicago coming up, starting, I think, Saturday. So I'm assuming that LJ is being delivered. But the question I have for you is a full complement of 52s for that race. I think 8, maybe.
Yeah, I haven't actually looked at that. I've been worried about getting our certificates in order and following all the inordinate amount of regulations that Chicago Yacht Club has. But yes, we do have. I know I talked to Chris just before we left for the Bayview race, and he's going to be there. I know the Usual Suspects is going to be there, and WinQuest is finally going to be out there. And no matter what, I can't convince them to come to Bayview. But and I think there's at least 2 others that I know of that are showing up. So yeah, it's going to be a totally different class that we're going to be in. For this one, there were some boats that we owed over 3 hours to, and I mean, that's just the nature of the class splits.
Yeah. The class is obviously the next 2 weeks is important. You got the Chicago to Mac this week, and then you got the Ugata Regatta. So that's obviously the meat of the season for you guys. So hopefully it'll be a very successful summer, because it started out pretty well for you. You win the Queen's Cup and you turn around and finish first in the Bayview race.
Yes, yeah, we're happy with our results so far, and we just need that. Obviously, we had a relatively detailed debrief afterwards on this race, and you know, there's a lot of things we could have done better, and we just need to learn from all of that. You know, this rig is still pretty new to us, and we're sorting that out. But yes, this is the heart of it. You know, as I said, I'm gone for 3 weeks sailing. So.
If you were driving the boat into Muskegon at the end of last year, October, whenever you take it up to Muskegon, I'm assuming you keep it in Muskegon.
Yes.
If you were driving up at the end of last year in 21 going to Muskegon, and I would have told you at that point that, hey, by the way, the first 2 big races you're going to win, you'd have been happy with that statement based on the 21 season as compared to what's happened in 22.
Oh my God, it's night and day, and even if we didn't win, it would just to be out on the water and competing is really what it's all about. I mean, there isn't anything better than that. And you know, this is such a compressed time frame that we deal with on the Great Lakes. You better get out there every time you can have the opportunity. So yeah, we're grateful. We're
talking with Bob Hughes, skipper of Heartbreaker, who just came off the 2022 Bayview Port Huron to Mackinac race. And Bob, it was an interesting race with very few, with not a whole lot of wind, 46 hours and change. I got a number of questions, but start with talk about the race.
Is that how long it was? Yeah, no, you know, it was nice to be back, obviously, on the Cove Island course and go back up into Canada, and adds a whole new dimension to the race. Obviously, did enjoy the short course last couple of years. You get in a little bit quicker, but right out of the get-go, our weather was pretty far off, and we made some poor decisions based on that forecast. You really have to remind yourself and check yourself that, hey, this is the Great Lakes. Weather forecasting is a tough job. You might get it right 60% of the time. And when you make big decisions on what sails you may or may not take based on that, you set yourself up for failure. So we thought it was going to be very light. And, you know, you get these programs, these routing programs that tell you where you think you're going to go. And whether you have a lot of confidence in them or not, they influence your thinking, and you start thinking that's the way to go instead of maybe be more intuitive to what's going on around you. But long story short, we left with just one jib, our oldest practice J1, because we didn't think there'd be much jib in it, and it would be very light when it was. And 10 hours later, we sailed in a jib, and we should be in our J15 at least all the way to Cove Island. And that didn't help our cause at all, but we did the best we could with that. And the guys sailed the boat really, really hard. And when we got up to Cove Island, it was fun because, you know, the sleds all go really, really fast in that light air region and so forth. So they were all around us. All the 52s were pretty close together. It was neat to see Usual Suspects, great family boat, really their first Mac second race. And they crossed in front of us at the top. Things got crazy. And then out of the blue, it was a blast from the past. I thought I was seeing Bill Alcott over again, but his old Reichel Pew, which is now MC Squared, when that boat came out, I don't know if it's been 20 years or whatever, but that was the boat on the lakes. It was so bloody fast. They rounded the mark in front of all of us, the top mark. And considering how much slower that boat is than everybody, I'm like, oh my gosh, those guys, we all thought they must have just pegged the Canadian shoreline, which didn't make sense. And then looking on the tracker, it looks like they just went right up the rum line, and it proved rum line was the smartest thing. We all thought we were doing a little bit better, hugging over more of Michigan shore, but it was amazing first leg that those guys sailed to get to the mark first. And looks like they basically went right up the rum line. So yeah, it was challenging. It was fun. I mean, it was a quick sail up to the mark, but we had the wrong sail, and but everybody was close at that point. And then, you know, the real action was beginning once we got around there.
When you got past the Cove Island virtual mark, it looked like Natalie J went south about 50 miles west of that mark, and they went to Lake Michigan. And when we were looking at in that 3-4 o'clock in the morning step, they were at 6.5, and you guys were on the rum line at 4.5, 5. When somebody makes that decision to go, because you were anywhere from first to seventh and then eventually back to second in terms of the overall, they made that decision. Does that go through your mind, or do you just figure out that they know something you don't know, or you stay with the plan?
Yeah, that's really where all the action started, and I've got to give them major props for having some conviction and sticking to it. It took a lot of courage to do what they did. Basically, they rounded maybe 7-8 minutes in front of us at Cove Island Light. Kites Up started reaching, and so we jibed right away about the first couple minutes. No, maybe about 5 minutes after, because we had a couple of 70s right in front of us. And so we jibed and headed towards the Michigan shore, and went maybe 15, 20 minutes, maybe half hour, and then jibe back and was coming at them, and it looked really good. And so we kept going, and then they jibed and headed our way, and they just kept going. And then we kept going on starboard jibe, and then we had a couple really nice shifts came where we jibed. We're like, oh my gosh, these are huge gains, and we were sailing right at the mark after a couple nice jibes, and we're just like, we can't go away from this because we're sailing at the mark. We have nice pressure, and we are sailing south now towards the Michigan border at the mark, not the Michigan border, but the lower peninsula. And this is looking great. And with this lift, these guys are got to be in a tough situation down there. But goodness gracious, we didn't realize we were going to run out of wind there in the middle, and we did, and we parked up. And those guys sailed a lot of extra distance to get down there, and they found some extra breeze closer to that Michigan shore, and they got quite a bit in front of us. But then we had a nice little run at night. We got the masthead zero up and closing them, and then they parked up. But then they had the guts to go back down to Michigan when all the rest of us were parked up, looked at some breeze, and sailed right around everybody. And, you know, Sunday morning, we're, you know, too far in the middle, and you can see the breeze off the Michigan shore, and they're just sailing down around it and got by us again. And I told we're on the island. I mean, that took a lot of conviction and courage to go all the way over there to do that, and you guys made it work. And I hate to lose to something. I hate losing, but when you do something strategic like that and have the guts to do it and execute it, man, you deserve to win. So that was really well played by them.
When you don't carry enough horsepower in terms of jibs, do you worry about the weight of that sail being too much on the boat, or is it that technical that if you carry a 75 extra pounds, that's going to change?
Yeah, sometimes you try to outsmart yourself and you think you're too smart when you're really being stupid and make dumb decisions. That's exactly it, Greg. We were trying to keep the boat light based on the forecast. Only took that jib, but I mean, that hurt us getting to the island. But after that, at the end of the race, when there's finally a teeny bit of wind, we didn't need the other sail. It was just, we would have done a lot better up to the island if we'd have had the right one. But after that, it was masthead 0 and it was the right jib, and then the code, or excuse me, the A1 that we used the most time. So it was just dumb when you overthink sometimes. You just got to remember, is it a bigger mistake to have a little bit too much weight on and not use it, or is it a bigger mistake to not have the sail that you need and when you should have it? So we got to think about that next time we make decisions like that.
This may seem like a dumb question, but I'm curious. As a skipper, too much wind or not enough wind, which is the worst?
Not enough.
Okay.
Not enough.
You can always cut down the sail plan. I get that part.
Yeah. Power the boat.
The strangest part of looking at either the cove or the shore course, you saw boats, in the same sort of area, 20-25 mile area, where some guys were doing 6.5 and 7, and guys were doing a knot and a half. That was a very strange. I don't think I've seen that in a while.
Yeah, it was because when we were yesterday morning, when we were too much in the middle, and there were shore course boats that were obviously closer because they would have been there coming up along the shore. They were sailing fast, that pressure, that same stuff that Natalie got into. And kind of while you're on the topic, I do want to say it's super cool. Scott Sellers and his daughter Merritt double handing their J111, and our sport, we need more young people in it. We need more women in it, and we need more kids in it out doing it instead of playing video games. And just to see that story, father and daughter out there sailing double-handed and doing well, and looks like she had the time of her life. That makes my day.
We are hoping to talk to them. We didn't get a chance to talk to them Friday night, as we get a chance to talk to you up in Port Huron at the Port Huron Yacht Club, but we're hoping to talk to them at the end of the week. She was, from everything we've heard, she's a little this was a little much, I think, the race and all the publicity, and she's 14, and so we didn't want to press. She's 14 years old, and it's we think of it's just one of those processes.
I think it's a great example for all of us to get some more people like that on our boats.
Absolutely. One of the things that the Sail GP guys did, you and I had this conversation. The Canadians did really well in the Bahamas with a young lady, and then they made the rule the next week you had to have a lady on board, woman on board. So they want to follow that, and I think sometimes you have to make that work. So I think that's a good thing.
There's a lot of great women sailors out there. So, and there's a lot of kids that we just got to get excited about the sport, and sometimes we get locked into our ways of having experience. So
this is, again, you look at the finals. You in your division, you guys are first and second, you and Natalie J. But by the time you get rid of the handicaps, Natalie J is third and you're 10th in the final standings, because you got to obviously deal with the handicaps. Do you pay much attention to that, or do you just go race and worry about who finishes across the line first in an actual race?
Yeah, no, just with these boats, you're just trying to beat the other 52s, and now that they're really the fastest boats out there in most conditions, you're racing to try to get to the island first, let the rest take care of itself. If we can beat Natalie J in this race, coming up, I think there's 8 52s. If we can get to the winner, whoever gets the island first is going to win the 52 class, most likely, and that's what we're about. And certain races, the 52 does really, really well. They win the overall lot, but in those conditions, the shorter water line at 52, the 70s are going faster. The boats like Talisman and so forth, those long water lines and those light air boats, it was perfect conditions for them, and they showed. And they're just going to do a lot better than us. That's the conditions that we're not going to do well in an overall.
During the 2 days of the race, this will be my last question. During the 2 days of the race, kind of had a chance to go back through and look at crews, and then look at where guys were from. And your boat, perfect example. The proliferation of pros at the high end is. Do you think the majority of the guys running that race realize there's that many pros on that many boats?
Probably not. And it's just these boats. I've sailed with pros for 30 years. My first one was on a J35, and obviously with this boat we have a lot. And it's a little bit just because of the way the boats are and they're so tweaky and so forth. And there's a certain group that really knows how to pull everything and set everything just upright. So you kind of get sucked into that. Love to have some more local sailors and state sailors on board, but also enjoy like sailing with the best. You know, you can't go out and ride your bike against the Tour de France guys, but you get a chance to sail with some of the best out there. So enjoy that aspect of it and the competition of competing against them.
Well, I asked the question because if I'm playing in my club championship for, you know, a two-man best ball, I can't hire Tiger Woods. You guys have that opportunity in this sport, and that's actually kind of not a bad thing. I mean, there's guys making money at it, but it also improves the sailing of those who are not pros.
Yeah, exactly. If you're into tennis, I'd much rather, you know, play against Rafa Nadal than my local knucklehead across the street and get my butt kicked and learn something, have an experience like that. So I've always enjoyed that part, being around the very best, because you learn and then competing against the best. And some of the other boats, obviously, the 52 class have some great talent on it. So it's fun to compete against. Hey, those are the same guys that, you know, has this Olympic medal and did this America's Cup and et cetera, et cetera.
Chicago Mac coming up Saturday. Just a quick field. You got a whole lot more 52s in this. Chris Duhan's back. A number of other boats are back in that race. So just a brief synopsis of what your thoughts are on Chicago.
I think it's going to be a brawl to the island. I'm sitting out there looking at the Manitous right now. Can't wait to go through there in a few days. My favorite racetrack, and there's going to be 8 52s on the line, all going racing to the island first. So, goodness gracious, it's like I love racing one design. All my previous Mac races, you know, before the 52s were bar 40s, 1D35s, J35s. We're always racing to the island one design, and that's pretty close to what we're doing here with 8 52s. But also the first one there will most likely win the over, or you know, be the first to finish. So there's a ton to race for, and we're really, really excited.
I want to say thank you to Paul, certainly Dr. O'Neal and Bob Hughes for their discussions on the Bayview's very successful Port Huron to Mac race. Obviously, this weekend you'll see Mackinac Island crowded again with the Chicago Yacht Club's event, and we talked to those folks a little bit about that. And then up next is a little bit our Happy Wanderer. I'm not sure exactly that's the name we want to give you, but Nagy Mata is going to talk to us about going around the Great Loop, and I think you'll find it to be a very interesting discussion. We'll be back in a second. Welcome back to our last episode of this week's show. We're talking with a friend and a confidant who's on a power boat, and the boat behind me is the boat he's standing on. And Nagy Mata is a guy who is going around on a power boat and is going to take the dream and go around the Great Lakes and in a variety of places. Now, you're a sailor from Crescent who has decided to do this, and we're going to chronicle all of the travels for those to see, because I think it's kind of cool. And let me start by saying thank you for taking the time to talk to us. You're in East Tawas, and I'm going to let you sort of give us the synopsis of what it is you're doing on the kind of boat you're behind and I'm looking at the moment.
Well, I'm doing what they call the Great Loop, the Great American Loop. It's basically a circumnavigation of the eastern part of the U.S. Think of it as a big circle. If I'm starting out in the Detroit area, I'm going up around Michigan to Chicago, enter the river system, go down the Illinois River, eventually end up in Mobile, Alabama, and go around Florida and up the East Coast, intercoastal, and cut back across the Erie Canal back to the Great Lakes. So that's going to take roughly a little over a year, maybe 14, 15 months. And it's not going to be nonstop. I'm going to be stopping often and heading home, for the family, and and take a break once in a while. But it's you're right. It's been a lifelong dream, and I started getting serious about it about 4 years ago. Started planning and preparing for it.
Why power over sail? Because you had a sailboat that you sold to buy this.
I did. In fact, I gave it some really serious thought, and I had a great sailboat. I had a Sabre 34. Loved the boat, had it for close to 30 years. My only challenge there is it has a deep draft. It had about almost 6 feet of draft. And the kind of the unspoken rules is that such a deep draft will pose a lot of problems for the loop. There's going to be a lot of places and that I cannot go because of the 6 feet draft. And also a lot of marinas I will not be able to fuel up or anything. But yes, it would have been ideal. I really gave it serious consideration, but decided to go to this little pocket trawler.
So explain the boat a little bit, because I want to get into the solo part of it, but talk about the boat. It's an outboard, am I correct?
It is. It's a 25-foot. It's called the Rossboro RF 246, and it's really kind of there's a lot of ex-sailors that own and love this boat. There's a strong community of these boats. You don't see two of them in Michigan. I think there's maybe about 2 or 3 in Michigan. See a lot of them in Maine, on the East Coast, and Florida as well.
On the picture behind me, I see windshield wipers.
Yeah.
So a boat with windshield wipers has to be a serious travel boat, right?
Yes, it can do can take on some serious water. And I'm still getting to know the boat. I only had it for a little over a year, but so far so good. It behaves quite well. It has an outboard. It has a 200-horse Yamaha. I got a small kicker motor for the loop, a small 10-horse Yamaha, and just kind of like there's a backup, and to even just going down the river with the current, no need to fire up the big motor.
Yeah. Air conditioned?
Air conditioning, stove, refrigeration, all the comforts of home.
I asked the reason of air conditioning. We're in it's sort of this second day of 90 plus, with the heat index being over 100. And I know it's always cooler on the water, but when it's 94 inland, you're still going to sweat on the boat. So I'm assuming air conditioning has to be a staple.
It is. But the air conditioning I have is it's only 110. I need to be plugged into a marina for shore power to operate it. I can't. I have lots of fans for if I anchor out or when I anchor out. But yeah, that's a downside.
Solar power?
Solar panel with it. It's got like an electric cooktop. It's got I got a little camp stove when I'm staying out. Yeah, all the comforts of home. Absolutely.
You are
refrigerator.
You are truly self-contained.
I am. And even I've had a chance to test the refrigerator, and it has a little freezer, and it keeps ice cream quite frozen.
Okay. 2 practical questions. You're going from a home bed, regular bed at your house,
Yeah.
to the bed you have now.
Yeah. Compare
those two, because if I couldn't sleep every night, it would drive me nuts.
Well, I've been sleeping pretty good, actually, and I'm glad to see that. The only challenge is it's 25 feet. So, and I packed enough stuff in here for a year, including food and supplies and tools, and even got a bicycle with me. So the challenge is you got to really be organized, and like it takes a while in the morning to get out of bed and make, kind of put things where they belong, and same thing going to bed. You got to be really disciplined and organized about how you store things, and you can't just leave stuff around anymore. So that's the key.
Did you give up any land-based house, or this is home right now?
This is home. I have a temporary address for the family, so that's where I get mail, and they check it for me, and if there's something urgent, they'll forward it to me. And but yeah, no, I don't have a land residence right now.
Okay, so you've severed in the most critical way of all. You are. I'm looking at where you live, so to speak.
Exactly. I my only mode of transport. I got rid of one car, and the other car is kind of a storage. So yeah, yeah, it's this is it, Greg.
Okay, so here, my question to you is this is a solo act, and I know that along the trip you've mentioned to me more than once that you're going to have folks come aboard and those kinds of things. But This is truly a solo project. Yes,
it is. It is.
Is there any reason why a solo project like this instead of maybe doing it with somebody?
Not particularly. I've on my sailboat. I sailed solo a lot, and I kind of enjoy the adventure and the challenge of it. But yeah, everybody's working, and I'm retired, so that's basically the challenge.
Okay, so you get up tomorrow, you can go anywhere you want to go, but what is if I were to ask for a mission statement from you, I guess I'm trying to sort of narrow down and drill down to what are you looking for from this trip? Or is just the adventure of doing it because you've thought about it for a long time?
Yeah, well, yeah. There's a sense of adventure to it. There's a little bit of a challenge. We had a bad rainstorm here yesterday, and so got up this morning to a couple of small leaks, and so I in the windows. So every day brings a new challenge, and you just got to deal with it and go with the flow. So it's I like that sense of adventure. I like that challenge, and there's a lot of other things. For example, a good part of the route, there's a lot of history in it, and if you're into history and unique places, that's really very exciting. One of my highlights I'm looking for is you can anchor right by the Statue of Liberty. They allow anchoring there. Apparently there's a designated anchorage area. A lot of people do that. So I'm excited about doing that kind of thing, seeing places from a boating perspective and doing things that are pretty unique.
Do you worry about any problems being by yourself, taking illness, or does that worry you, or is it just something that you deal with?
It's something you deal with. I talked to, I got all the exams and everything to the doctors before I left town here. And there's always, my doctor says, well, there's always telemedicine. And, so you can do that if, and they can write a prescription for anywhere I want. So it's really not, there's very few stretches where you're totally out of touch with civilization.
Is the beard part of the Hemingway-esque idea of not having to shave because it's convenient? Or is it a look that goes with sailing and being maritime?
Well, that's my COVID beard. I did not have a beard before COVID. When I was quarantined, I just kind of grew it and it stuck. So
okay. Briefly about the boat. It's 25 feet. It has a 200 horse on the back. And to be really clear, you are sort of trolling because the top speed of the boat's what, 15, 18 miles an hour?
I hit 21 miles an hour, but at that rate, these days you got to watch your fuel economy and how much gas costs. The first time I filled up on this trip, it was over $7 a gallon, and it's come down a little bit in the last couple of weeks. But so the fuel consumption is, as you probably know, is really proportional to how fast you go. So I figured out a couple of days ago that I can get twice as good fuel economy at 10 miles an hour than 13 miles an hour.
You also see a lot more.
You also see a lot more. So what's the rush, and kind of like you go for a few hours every day, anything from my shortest leg was about 3 hours. My longest leg was about 8 hours so far.
The obvious question to ask is, before you get into this boat and the rest of it, if there's a budget involved in this,
yeah.
And I don't want to be nosy, but I'm assuming you have to figure out that it costs X amount of dollars a day. Is that the way you break it down?
Exactly. And again, the fuel costs are probably the single largest expense right now. The next is marina cost. But food, you're going to eat whether you're at home or on the road.
Right.
In my case, it was really, since I don't have a residence, I don't have a rent or a mortgage at this point. So, I look at it as my fuel and marina expenses are basically, if I can keep them to what I was paying for my mortgage or residence, I'm good for it. So that's the way I look at it budget-wise.
Okay. Have you figured out how many nights at the marina and how many nights on the hook? Have you figured that out in your head?
No, it's only been just about a week so far, and maybe a little. So I haven't really figured exactly out. I haven't anchored out yet, but Michigan marinas are beautiful. I'm in East Dallas right now. It's a beautiful place, and I decided to stay here a couple of extra days, just because the town is great, and I got to catch up with a couple of boat repairs.
Last question as it relates to the boat. Do you worry at any point that there's a homesickness and when just the spacing of leaving a house going to a 25-foot boat? Has that entered your mind at all, or a thought process that, oh my God, I'm not sure I want to do this?
Yeah, it has entered my mind, and I had to be very careful what to pack on the boat. I rented a storage unit, put all my furniture and all my extra stuff that extra pots and pans and tools and all the unique stuff that you have at home. I put all that in storage. So yeah, it does enter my mind, but it's not going to be the kind of trip where I leave one day and come back a year later. I'm going to have people coming up. You can have stuff. There's always Amazon. You can get anything delivered to you anywhere and on the route. So I'm not too worried about missing something that I don't have.
When you explained this the first time, the only thing I could think about was there are people that talk about this all the time, and then there are people who do it. Yeah. And you did it, and I'm still talking about it. My point to that is that as we both are in that same age group and we're closer to the casket than we are to birth. And my only point is, I just think it's fabulous that you've made that decision to make this. And we're going to try and check in with you probably every couple of shows, maybe for 5 or 6 minutes, and maybe there'll be some highlights along it. Maybe kind of maybe take your journey to we'll follow you through YouTube and kind of see the part of the world that we might not have otherwise had a chance to visit.
That'll be awesome. Every day brings a new adventure. Today, for example, this morning, there's a bunch of kids that were learning how to sail. There's a sailing school here, and they were taking them out on little one design boats, and so it was kind of cool. Stop by, talk to the instructors, and yeah, we're happy to do that. I'm looking forward to it, actually.
Okay, so just for the next, we'll kind of tease the next visit. North, at some point you're leaving East Tawas. Where's the next great stop? Where's the next big stop?
I'm definitely going to stop at Mackinac City for a while, and then I'm going to hit the Petoskey, Harbor Springs, Charlevoix area. My goal is to be in Chicago by early September.
Okay,
so that's
so you can take your time and enjoy yourself. Listen, we will keep abreast of what you do. I appreciate the time talking with you, and for those of you who know Mr. Mata, you'll know what I know, which is he's probably one of the most likable guys you'll ever meet, and I think that comes out when you talk to you. But I'm really looking forward to the adventure for you and kind of chronicling it, and I think it'll be fun as part of the show. So, Nagy, thanks very much for your time.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Greg.
We want to thank all of our guests on Inside Great Lakes Sailing. Talked a little bit about the Mac and the very successful race that they had this past weekend. And it's 2 years away from the century mark, 100 years of racing in the Bayview Port Huron to Mac race. That'll be an interesting year. We wanted to also thank Nagy for coming to take some time to talk to us about his travels, and we'll certainly keep abreast of all the things that he's doing. So for all the guys in the back, we'll certainly catch you next time.